All right, guys, Submission Radio back for another week, a bite-sized episode featuring, well, one of the bestest friends the show could ever hope for. This next man is as handsome as he is dashing. You know him from his excellent work on ESPN, his fantastic sit-downs with all the biggest fighters ahead of all the biggest fights. He is the jet-flying, limousine-riding, news-dropping, content-topping, kiss the girls and make them cry, Dana White's #1 on speed dial kind of guy. What you see is what you get, and what you don't is better yet. Of course, it's Brett Okamoto. Welcome back to the show. How are you,
Wow. Man, I hope you were recording that because that was good, man. That was perfect. I wouldn't want to make you do that again. That was A+ work. Nice job.
So, Nature Brett, let me ask you this, because it's been a couple of weeks since you've been on the show, and there's been stuff happening in the world of MMA. The most interesting thing that's sort of gone down since you've been on the show last is in the last 24 hours, it looks like Tyron Woodley has registered his interest in eventually moving up to middleweight and fighting Israel Adesanya. Of course, the plan is to get a few fights out of the way in welterweight first. But what was your reaction when you saw that Woodley was sort of mentioning Adesanya and the fact that, you know, how that matchup might look like if it does happen down the line?
It's hard to have a really strong reaction to it, honestly, because, Tyron, I mean, even though he's a former champion, obviously a great fighter, pound for pound guy over the last 5, 6, however many years you go back. He wouldn't be close to getting a title shot against Izzy right now. I mean, his quickest way to get a title shot would probably be either to win the welterweight championship and then move up at like a super fight or head there now. But even if he headed there now, I mean, there's guys there in front of him. So, and we haven't even had an event over the last month or so. So, it's fun stuff. And Woodley is good at, creating content and calling people out. And Izzy is even better at responding. But as far as, really thinking about that fight, I'm honestly not giving it too much thought because we got plenty of other fights to think about right now.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, one of the biggest fights that sort of took a hit is obviously Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. The UFC's May 9th card took a bit of a hit. What did you think about Amanda Nunes deciding not to fight on May 9th, amidst this coronavirus pandemic, and explaining, I think quite rightfully so, that she wants a full training camp before she takes on Spencer?
I think it's a responsible decision by her. I think it does open her to criticism because, in the past she had said, I want 250 to move to Florida. Let's move it to Florida, and now that may end up being the case. And now she doesn't want the fight. So I think that some people are going to latch onto that. But this is not going to be the last time I think you hear about a case like this, where a fight doesn't happen just because of the circumstances that we're in right now. I mean, it is hard for these guys and girls to train and prepare for fights, and they're all sort of going through it in their own way, and they're trying to find answers. And a lot of them will still end up competing because they don't want to sit out and they want their paychecks, of course. But if I'm Amanda Nunes, and I don't feel like I can be 100% ready to fight Felicia Spencer, then it's too much for me to risk. If I don't feel like I can get a training camp in to at least a comfort level where I feel confident going into a fight. I mean, to me, it actually shows that Amanda is potentially taking Felicia as serious as she needs to. I think it's going to be really easy for a lot of people to look at that matchup and be like, oh, Felicia Spencer, I don't really know her. She doesn't really knock out a lot of people. She doesn't talk crap. Like she seems like she's just being fed to the wolves here against Amanda Nunes. I don't look at it that way. I mean, I think Amanda is the clear favorite. But I think that Amanda needs to be on top of her game because Felicia is a full-size featherweight. She's big for that division. She cuts weight to get down to 145. And, I mean, we've seen Amanda be out-wrestled previously in her career. So hopefully this is a sign of how serious Amanda is taking the fight. That's how I'm interpreting it.
I mean, how big of a blow do you think it's to the card? Nunes isn't typically a massive draw, but she's really built her fan base. And Dana White has sort of stated that there's no pressures for fighters to fight, but this is the co-main event after all. And do you think it affects her relationship with the UFC? I mean, Dana White has showered Amanda with love lately, but it wasn't that long ago that he wasn't too happy about her pulling out of the Shevchenko fight.
Yeah, I mean, usually the UFC does not appreciate it if you're not ready to fight, right? I mean, we know that about them as a promotion, but I have heard that Dana has gone out of his way to express to the fighters directly in a video call, and then also the managers, is that, hey, if you don't want to fight during this time, I get it. I don't want you doing something that you don't want to do. So he has expressed that in as many words. And as far as what it does to the card, well, just to finish my thought, I don't think it hurts the relationship too much. In fact, I've already heard that provided that Nunes is healthy and does feel like she can get the full camp in, that this fight would just be rebooked pretty quickly, as quick as June. So I don't think there's too much of bad blood there between the two sides of Amanda making this decision. As far as what it does to the card, I mean, anytime you're talking about Amanda Nunes, who is arguably the greatest fighter of female history in the female mixed martial arts history, being removed from a card, it's going to sting. But this card is so deep because it's like kind of a collection of the 4 cards that was previous to it, right? So there's a lot of great fights on this card. I mean, everybody was saying right from the beginning that if this card looks anything like Dana White wanted it to, it would be one of the deepest cards in UFC history. And I mean, I still think it is, even with the loss of Amanda.
Yeah, totally. How do you think this card looks as we get around to May 9th? Because like you mentioned, it is a very deep card if everything comes together. But the understanding was that when this was sort of announced that these were the targeted fights, some of them didn't even have verbal agreements from the fighters themselves. And you kind of got to expect that. I mean, with Amanda and Khabib, they're champions. Maybe they have the luxury of saying, look, I don't really want to fight at the moment. And that's completely fair. Maybe some fighters won't. But if anybody catches the coronavirus, if anybody feels like they're not up to it, how do you think this card kind of looks as we get closer to May 9th? Do you think there's going to be a lot of other fights where this kind of thing may happen?
At this point, no. At this point, no. I mean, when Dana White kind of revealed what his targeted card was, you're right. Some of these fights, a lot of them were not agreed to, but it didn't take long for them to agree. I mean, these guys had been in camp, most of them. Some of them had canceled fights. Other ones were on this card already, or supposed to be on the original UFC 249 in April. So a lot of these guys wanted to fight, man. I mean, they've invested in camps, and they were in great shape, and so they don't want to see that work go to waste. So a lot of them, responded quickly and said, yeah, I'll take this fight. I think the card looks great. I mean, on paper, it looks fantastic. I mean, anybody who looks at this card is going to say, I mean, this card is loaded, stacked. The big question, going in, I think one of the big questions is, how are these guys going to look? I mean, some of them accepted this fight sort of on short notice. I mean, the Pettis-Cerrone fight, I mean, everybody, I think, would be excited about that one, but that one kind of came together out of nowhere. So what kind of shape will those guys be in? What kind of shape will any of them be in? We're dealing in a time when you're not supposed to stand within 6 feet from somebody, and these guys are trying to go through a training camp. So I'm sure that there has been challenges. It's been difficult for them to prepare for the fight. I don't think we're going to see a huge hit in the quality of fights, but it's definitely something I'm curious about, to see what the quality of the fights is. But on paper, I think the card looks excellent.
It's going to be fascinating to see what kind of buys a card like this gets. I mean, looking at it now, it's not going to be Tony versus Khabib. Do you imagine the pay-per-view buys for this event are going to be much lower than the event that was supposed to happen last weekend between Tony and Khabib?
I mean, yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that you're going to sell the same amount of numbers that you would if Khabib's on the card. Khabib has really risen to that level of, I mean, I wouldn't call him necessarily a pay-per-view star, but he is one of the most recognizable and just that name recognition and his brand is something that you want on a pay-per-view. And if you take that away, obviously, I think it hurts your selling power of the card. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this card does, guys, because like, not only is it the only thing going on, but for a while it's going to be the only thing. Like we're not even talking about just like, oh, Saturday night, what are we going to do? Oh, there's a UFC fight on. There's nothing else going on. I think that there's going to be this feeling of like it's the only thing to talk about for a while too. Like all of us want to talk about something that's not the virus. I mean, even if you're one of those people, like, and I'll admit, I'm kind of like this. I mean, I'm trying to pay attention to every detail of this virus. Like, I welcome the opportunity to talk about something else, and so I think it's going to touch a lot of people who wouldn't normally tune into the UFC, just in the regards of like, hey, so who's fighting? Like, there's going to be a live event. Okay, so how are they doing it? Who are these guys? Like, and the more they learn about it, and the more they just talk about it, because it has the spotlight on it, not just that Saturday, May 9th, but it has a spotlight on it really between now and then. So I think that that's just a lot of time for this fight to get promoted by the UFC and to be in just discussion of the general population. So I could see that really helping it. It's tough to say, but I would still say that it would have sold better if Khabib was on it for sure.
And then, of course, Dana White and the UFC want to continue doing events basically every weekend at the Apex. I know they formally canceled a whole bunch of events or canceled them, and then a lot of them are supposed to move to the Apex, and the cards are going to be reshuffled. But with the Nevada State Athletic Commission sort of still not having their monthly meeting, still not coming together to discuss the future, how do you think that could potentially affect these plans to have events in Apex? Do you think they happen?
Eventually, I think they happen. The timing of when, I really don't know. I mean, obviously, I live in Nevada. I live in Las Vegas, for people who don't know. So, I mean, the governor here in this state has pretty much been forthright in saying, we're not going to open anything here anytime soon. I mean, we're not looking for a mass reopening. And the thing about Vegas, of course, is everything revolves around the Strip. The Strip, everyone's worried about the health of the Strip first and foremost, because so much of this city and its identity and its infrastructure is just based around the Strip. So that takes a lot of the air out of the room, a lot of the conversations. Like, you have to fix the Strip before you fix anything else. But I mean, just personally speaking, opening a strip of hotels and casinos where a lot of people are going to be coming in from different parts of the world potentially to be in a close proximity with one another, that's a totally different conversation than, can the UFC have fights in an Apex Center, in a controlled environment with people who are getting tested, who are getting paid to do so and then leave, So I'm hopeful that the state looks at it that way. It looks at it as two separate things, because if it's attached to the decision to reopen casinos, then, I mean, it might not happen for a while. But if they look at it as, is this something that the state can feasibly do, reopen its athletic commission to have these fights? And, Top Rank Boxing, I was talking to the CEO of Top Rank, Todd DeBuff, and he said that he would hold events here as well if the athletic commission were to reopen. So I hope it's something the state considers, but right now it's, I mean, clearly it's if the UFC could go here on May 9th, they would. And I don't know if that's going to happen. In fact, I don't think it will.
And I mean, obviously the big one is when will fans be able to watch live sports? And I'm just wondering, it looks like we're a long way away from someone walking out to an octagon and fans being there and fans being able to attend a fight event. Looking at it now, I mean, a lot of people are saying it doesn't even look like a realistic idea, like people attending live sports. It might not happen for maybe even a year, maybe longer. When you think about it, what sort of comes across your mind? Do you think things settle down enough eventually for fans to attend events sooner rather than later, or do you think it's a case where it could take a year, maybe even two, before we see fans attend a UFC event live?
I mean, the right person to ask this is a medical expert, but I will say, I mean, from what I've read, yeah, I mean, what you're describing sounds like what they're predicting, that we won't have a vaccine for coronavirus for a while, and until we do, that bringing together that amount of people is not a feasible idea. So, I mean, I know that I am personally kind of preparing for a world in which, we have sporting events without crowds for a while. And I think, all of the sporting organizations are probably preparing for that too.
Just, you mentioned speaking to the Top Rank CEO. I'm just wondering, the other weekend, a couple of weeks ago, you were the man that spoke to Dana White when he canceled the original UFC 249 that was supposed to happen last weekend. Man, it was a great interview, but also I imagine that would have been a pretty, I suppose, intense and weird situation for yourself personally to be there and for Dana to sort of reveal that to you on camera. Can you take us behind the scenes there? What was that like when you found out that they were canceling the event? What was the vibe like from Dana? And what was the vibe like in general over there? I believe he did it at the Apex, the interview. Yeah. What was the vibe like in general when all that was going down? I believe it would have been pandemonium, right?
You would think, but here's the thing. Like I expected Dana White to be upset. I expected Dana White to be angry. I expected him to be fired up. I mean, everything that you know about Dana, you guys, and I think any fan that follows this sport. I mean, to jump through the hoops that he did and to put forth the effort that he did, and the small group of people around him, those top level executives who were really working around the clock on this, to have it, to have it be shut down, that it was kind of the decision was taken out of his hands. That's not something that Dana usually reacts well to. But when he got there, because I got there before him, and he was at the headquarters actually, which is right across the street, but you still got to drive over there. So I got in there before him, and yeah, I was expecting him to be angry, and I was expecting the interview to be a little touch and go. But honestly, what he seemed exhausted. I mean, he just seemed like he had put everything that he had into trying to make this event happen, and he was too tired to be upset, honestly. And I used this analogy with Matt Serra actually when I was talking to him about it. It felt like, when a fighter's like, I did everything I could to win this fight and I came up short. I got prepared. I know that I didn't leave any box unchecked, and that's probably like a cheesy way to put it, but that's kind of the vibe. I mean, that's the analogy I would use, is that he really tried and felt. I think that there was some solace for him that he felt like I did figure it out. I could have done it, but ESPN is asking me to not do it. So I won't. I'll be a good partner to them. But I could do it if I wanted to. He mentioned that in the interview like 3 times. So I think that made it easier to swallow too, is that he's like, hey, I could have done it, and I think that made it easier for him.
I almost feel like that was one of the biggest takeaways from that interview, that, hey, he could have done it, had he been allowed to. I'm just wondering, Tony versus Khabib, that's the fight that we wanted. It's not what we're getting on paper. We're getting Justin and Tony, which, on paper is a great fight. But here's the thing, let's say they go in there, someone gets injured, the winner, the loser. Do you think, let's say Tony goes in, wins, and he's out for X amount of months. Do you think that potentially fast tracks the Conor versus Khabib rematch? Because Dana White hasn't been shy about letting the world know that is the fight that he wants to do. And I feel like if the smallest excuse is there to put that fight on, it may very well happen.
I can't even add too much to that. I agree 100%. And I get people online asking me, why are you even asking Dana about Conor? And it's like, listen, I have been very clear. Tony versus Khabib has been my number one fight I've wanted to see for probably 3 years now. 3 years. It's like, if you ask me, what is the one fight I need to see? That is it. But if you can't look at what's going on and read between the lines and figure out that the UFC would absolutely love to put on that fight because it sells. Yeah. It's a huge, huge moneymaker for them. And ESPN as their broadcast partner, probably not going to be too upset about it, So the possibility of Conor getting a fight that us purists who watch the sport closely know that he probably doesn't deserve more than others, that possibility always exists. So I think there's a very, very, very real chance that Conor ends up fighting Khabib next. If I was putting lines on it, I don't know if I would make Conor the favorite, but I would not put him very far behind the winner of May 9th.
So are you saying that even without injury, maybe if it's a lackluster fight or both men don't put in the performance that sort of the UFC was hoping, and it's a bit of a stinker because both guys maybe are out of shape and the fight doesn't really do much, that possibly Conor might even be able to step in that regard? Or do you think it's only an injury thing that would put that into play?
I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, I guess it depends on exactly when Khabib is wanting to come back. He's said, he told me that he felt he could be back as early as August, but that was for Tony. I don't know what his reaction to fighting Conor would be. I've asked him that before as well, and he said that he won't even entertain it. That's not a fight he wants. But there's a lot to play out. I mean, to your guys' point just there, I think we got to see how the fight goes on May 9th. I mean, even if these guys are in slightly not tip-top shape, I can't see this fight not being a very entertaining fight. I could definitely see this fight taking a lot out of whoever wins it. It's one of those fights where you expect whoever to win it to pay for it a little bit. So we'll just have to see. I mean, the timing is everything. But again, the point that you made early on is the correct one, is that the UFC is looking for an excuse to make Khabib versus Conor. I mean, they're looking for it. And if they get one in any type of way, they're gonna look to exploit it, because that's the biggest fight they can make.
Appreciate the time, Brett. We'll let you go in a moment. Just want to touch on this. Obviously, GSP doing an interview last week with Ariel Helwani for ESPN. As always, of course, Khabib was a big part of that interview, a big topic of it. And there's always kind of this dance with MMA fans that, will we ever see GSP versus Khabib? And I just get the sense that the UFC has its plans for Khabib. He's a draw. He's a star. They kind of need him more than ever. And Khabib has his plans where, he wants to fight, Tony. They want him to fight Conor. And before those fights happen, by the time those fights happen, GSP is obviously going to be, almost 40 most likely. Do you think that given how important Khabib is to the company, this kind of puts the nail in the coffin for any potential GSP Khabib matchup, that the UFC just wouldn't want to risk it at this point?
I don't actually.
Oh.
And the reason I think that is just because I don't think Khabib has that many fights left anyway. I think you're right in that the UFC had a plan for Khabib when he won the title. And it was at that time that they had just zero interest in him fighting George. Like they were very strongly against it, which, to their credit, I would have been strongly against it. Go back to the time when Khabib won the championship. That thing hadn't been defended much. Conor did not defend that belt. So I was very much in favor of, let's see Tony, let's see Dustin Poirier. Let's just get back to some resemblance of sport after, Conor won the belt and then disappeared and went off to boxing, which good for Conor, but not great for that division, right? So I was against the idea of George fighting Khabib. But now, Khabib has defended it against Poirier. Had all of this not happened, unfortunately, he would have, fought Tony. And had he defended it against Tony, then you're looking at potentially Gaethje or potentially a Conor rematch. And I think at that point, how many fights does he truly have left after that? I've gotten the sense when I've been around Khabib that he's not going to stick around for the next 5-6 years. So if he's talking about, I'm looking around the sport, I don't need the money. I'm here for the legacy. I'm not going to stick around and face, your next 8 challengers. Give me George St. Pierre for my final fight. I think the UFC would be very open to that, actually. So it's not something they're going to explore immediately, but I definitely don't see it as being a dead option at all.
That's fascinating. The idea of GSP possibly being around longer than Khabib. Imagine that. So I think it's an interesting point that you bring up there, Brett. And also with the coronavirus, who knows, that could have cost us a couple of fights that we would have seen Khabib usually fight, which is an absolutely brutal thing to think about. As we wrap up, Casper mentioned dancing before. The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary on ESPN. First 2 episodes are out. The thing is absolutely unbelievable. I just want to get your thoughts on it, man. What did you think of it? I know, obviously, you're a big man down there at ESPN. Have you been able to watch the whole thing? Have they given you all 10 parts? I know some people have been able to watch it, and apparently it's going to get crazy over the next few weeks.
I did not receive that preview screening. And I got to tell you, I didn't watch the first 2 episodes yet. I'm gonna stockpile them. I'm gonna stockpile them because I'm a total binge watcher, so I can't do this. Watch a couple episodes and then wait for a while. So I'm gonna stockpile them and then I'm gonna watch them all at once. You won't hear from me for a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you, it's absolutely unbelievable. But one of the things that's kind of brought up is this question of who is sort of the Jordan when it comes to looking at MMA, and of course, Jordan is a guy that makes $123 million a year off his Nike deal alone. He's worth $2 billion. He's an owner of an NBA team I don't know how, but apparently the Charlotte Bobcats are worth $1.5 billion. So who do you think kind of compares to that Jordan-esque legacy, or I suppose status in MMA?
Yeah, like you said, there's different ways of looking at it. There's different ways of making that comparison. Depending on which lens you're looking through it, you can make a case for a lot of different people. I'm gonna say it's Anderson Silva though, still for me.
Wow. When
you watch a sport for a long time, for whatever reason, whatever the new doesn't seem like as mythical or as magical sometimes as the previous ones. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I didn't get to see Jordan play that much, just from a standpoint of like how old I was, and even though I was a Jordan fan, I wasn't sitting around watching Chicago Bulls games every night. But when I watched Jordan play, and even as a kid, when some of the bigger moments happened in his career, the magical feeling of that, I can only compare, I think, or best compare it to Anderson Silva in his prime. So I would go Anderson Silva.
The whole thing's based around a DVD that was recorded and then sort of put on the shelf by Jordan and the crew until now. And for me, when I think about it, I'm always thinking, you know, a guy like John Jones, if you get a camera crew to follow him around, but then he can only release the footage eventually when he decides to do it, that would sort of be on the same level of like, whoa, this is what's really going on. But it's an absolutely fascinating documentary. Of course, Brett Okamoto himself. Just quickly, as we wrap, final question, you know, if UFC 249 does go down over there in Florida, how it's reported, it's been reported that it might be Florida. What will be your role on the fight night? How will you be involved? Will you be over in the location? Let's say it's Florida right now. It looks like it might be if the event goes down.
I don't know yet. I'm not sure. Things are changing so much, and so many plans have been made that then ended up being, you know, in this world we're living in, and these uncertain times. I mean, you make plans too early, and you're just asking for your plans to just they don't matter anymore because things change, right? So I have no idea if I'm going to be at UFC 249 as of right now. I want to be there though. I mean, as a journalist who covers mixed martial arts, why wouldn't I want to be there? I mean, it's a historic event. Obviously, it's got so many different storylines, and so it's just so unique. There's going to be different things that are going to be going on that week that are just so alien from what we're used to in this sport. I mean, because as you guys know, you go to a UFC fight week, yeah, you're going to get quirky things happen all the time. This is a wacky sport, but it is a well-oiled machine in terms of, like, you know, structure and who's where, and, you know, they have it down to a T in terms of that regard. So this one's going to be a different animal, and I want to be there to see it, but I don't know if I'll be there or not.
I'd love to see Brett just sitting in the fifth row, no one around him, hat backwards, feet up on the chair, ready to go. The backwards hat dance. Hopefully, documentary coming to a TV screen near you. It's B.R. Komodo, of course, on Twitter. Make sure to follow him for all the latest news. And that is it for Submission Radio this week. Who knows what's going to happen next week? But make sure to follow this man to find out what exactly happens. That is us here at Submission Radio. We'll catch you guys later.